Hello everybody, I'm Tiffany and welcome to my channel Tiffany Books, Movies, and Stuff. Before I actually get into the review today, I did want to take a moment and talk about what's been going on in the world recently. I haven't had an opportunity to do this, so wanted to take this chance now. If you aren't up to date for some reason, there have been worldwide protests regarding police brutality against minorities. And this was sparked by the recent death of a black man named George Floyd, and he died at the hands of a white police officer. Through the Black Lives Matter movement, there has been a demand for change, which includes holding police accountable for obvious crimes they commit against minorities and in general. And it also demands that something be done about the systemic racism that has been so prominent and is ingrained in the American justice system. One of the biggest demands is for the defunding of the police and reallocating those funds to the community. For example, giving some of those funds to healthcare workers so they have better access to supplies and equipment that may be needed. Even though the media coverage has slowed down a good amount, there are still many movements going on to create change. And I think it's really important for you to keep up to date and as informed as possible. So I'm going to leave some links in the description below to sites that can further educate you on the Black Lives Matter movement and also show you where to sign petitions and donate in order to make a difference. The movie I'm reviewing today, The Hate U Give, is a great movie and it can give you some insight into what this movement is fighting against. I highly suggest you watch it. It opened my eyes a lot, and also to look for other movies and books out there that can further educate you on the movement as well. I know there are a lot of people out there who have been posting lists of movies and books that you should watch during this time. So make sure to go check out those links that I've listed below if you get a chance to, and just further educate yourself as much as possible while this movement is going on and hopefully continues to grow. Now, without further ado, let's actually get into the movie review. So like I said, the movie I'm reviewing today is The Hate U Give. I absolutely love this movie. It came out originally in 2018. I wasn't able to see it in theaters. I was able to watch it after. It became one of my favorite movies of that year. This movie has a 7.4 out of 10 on IMDb, which should indicate that you should definitely see it. That's a really hard rating to get on IMDb. I think it actually deserves a bit higher. I think it deserves like an 8.0 around there. It has an amazing cast as well. It stars Amanda Stenberg, who is from Hunger Games. She played Rue, and she's also from The Darkest Minds, so she's just been kicking butt, and it's been really awesome to see her grow into such a strong actress. I think this is her best performance by far. It also stars Regina Hall. You may know her most recently from Girls Trip. Anthony Mackie is in this, who is best known for Falcon and Captain America, and he's been around forever. He's done so many great movies and roles over the years. And it also stars Issa Rae, who is from the show Insecure, which is a hit show on HBO. So overall, just a really fantastic cast. For those of you who don't know what this movie is about, it follows a young black girl named Star who is driving home from a party with her best friend Khalil. They end up getting pulled over by a white police officer, and the police officer ends up shooting and killing Khalil, claiming that he saw Khalil had a gun when there was no gun. It's a very powerful movie. It does talk heavily about police brutality and really does show you the systemic racism in our judicial system. It goes through the process of what happens when something like this occurs, and sadly, this really occurs quite frequently. So it really shows you the injustice that happens with this. That's really all I want to tell you without spoiling you. I know it was a quick, non-spoilery section, but it is an amazing movie. If you haven't watched it, go watch it, and then come back here and we can discuss and talk about feels and everything together. Thank you so much for joining me, non-spoilery people. I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the spoilery section. Alright, goodbye! So many different thoughts on this movie. Like I said, I think Amanda Stenberg did such a fantastic job. This was by far her best performance that I've seen her do. She made me cry multiple times in this movie. One of my favorite moments in the movie deals with her uncle, who is a police officer. There's this one part in the movie before she goes in front of a grand jury, which we're going to talk about that too, and her uncle is explaining what runs through a cop's head when they pull somebody over. If there's a woman in the car, is the woman beat up in any way? If there's two people in the car and they're talking, is it a distraction in order to keep the cop from seeing something else in the car. Is there something else in the car in general? Is there a weapon? And one thing he says is that if I think I see a weapon, I don't hesitate to shoot. And Star calls him out on this. She goes, okay, well, if you're in a white neighborhood and there's a guy driving a Mercedes and he's in a suit, he could be a drug dealer, right? And her uncle says, yes, of course. But she tells him, okay, if it's a white guy though, would you say hands up or would you shoot? And the uncle admits he would say hands up. And I loved that they called this out, because that little thing right there is what can save a life. And that shows the racism right there, because if it's a white person, you don't hesitate to say hands up first. But if they're black or some other type of minority, you just shoot. And Star even says in there, do you hear yourself right now? It's this racism that is just really ingrained in society, and it's really sad. Star goes to a school which is basically an all-white school, and especially there, and specifically through Haley, you see the racism and the type of ignorance that exists in our society, where there's people who don't care, or they just don't get the way that they're being is racist. For example, the first thing that she tells you about the school, she has to do Star version number 2, the approachable Star. She can't really confront people. She can't use slang. You see someone walk by and go like, hey boo, and she's not allowed to say that, because if she says that, she comes off as ghetto, but the white people say it, it's cool. And that's a big thing in society. We think we're being cool and just using slang, but we don't realize how we associate it. Haley is the most frustrating character on the planet, because Haley, this very white privileged young girl, doesn't get it. I think there's a part of her that doesn't care, but she doesn't see herself as racist. And Star keeps getting mad at her, and you understand why. And I do like how the movie slowly progresses her saying something worse and worse and worse. The first thing that strikes you as wrong is Star's playing basketball and she's not really focusing. Haley comes up to her and goes, come on Star, pretend it's a piece of fried chicken. And you see Star get really upset. And all of a sudden Haley goes, what's wrong? We had fried chicken for lunch. But it still rubs you the wrong way. And then it continues to get worse. You see later on her comment about the white police officer and her saying how she feels bad that people are making him out to be evil when he's not, and he's just doing his job, which is how so many people think in this society of this person is just doing their job. But if it was reversed, and if it was a black police officer and they killed a white man, would it be viewed the same way? And Star gets mad at her again, because murder is murder. What he did was wrong. Khalil did nothing wrong. And then you have the climactic moment with Haley, where she basically shows her full-out racist views to Star, saying, you're the non-threatening type. He is. In his hand, that brush looks like a weapon. And what Star does terrifies Haley. It's a very powerful moment in the film, because it does the reverse. You see Haley scared, crying on the ground, but Star is just doing exactly what that police officer did to them. And again, with the school in general, they do show another moment in there earlier on when it comes to the protests, and all of these white kids start skipping school because there's a protest going on. It's one thing going to a protest, but going to a protest for the right reasons is a whole different matter. You shouldn't be going just because you get out of something, and that's what upsets Star again, because of the fact that all of these people aren't doing it because they actually care about what happened. They're doing it because they can get out of a test. So that's one thing we gotta remember too, is that we all have to be unified, because being unified and strong together is what's gonna cause change, and it has been causing change. Everyone should be equal. There should be no racism, especially when it comes to the law, which is supposed to protect a human being. I just do feel like this movie was really well balanced, because you do have Star's boyfriend, Chris, who is played by KJ Apa from Riverdale, and he exemplifies, I think, a white person who doesn't completely understand. I've been seeing quotes around on social media, for example, that say, I don't understand, but I stand, basically saying, I don't understand what you've been through, but I stand with you. So I feel like Chris, her boyfriend, exemplifies that. He doesn't truly understand and will never fully understand what Star has to deal with, but he loves her for who she is and does his best to support her. And he never pretends to try and understand what she's been through. And that, I think, is really cool that they have that in that movie too. Don't try and pretend that you know exactly what they're going through, because you don't know what they're going through. But show that you stand with them at the end of the day, and you know that what is happening is wrong. It does also show how the media can twist stuff. There's a moment where you see Khalil's mother on the screen who is on drugs, and she looks really, really messed up, and they comment why in the world they had to make his mom look that way, and the media does that. It does warp stuff. When there are protests protests going on. They show it in the movie, but in real life too, they usually show the violent things that protesters do. Because as a whole, protests are peaceful. So they only show the violent side of it though. But they don't actually show the police officers doing anything, which they do. You'll see a protest happening, then all of a sudden tear gas is thrown and rubber bullets are being shot. How the media portrays it is how a lot of people see it. And it's actually usually quite the opposite of what the media is portraying. They bring up the fact that Khalil was selling drugs and he was working with King, who's played by Anthony Mackie, the big drug lord kingpin of that area. As the star is talking about Khalil, she realizes everybody's focusing on the fact that he was a drug dealer instead of realizing what happened to him was wrong. He didn't do anything during that time. Drug dealing isn't right. You know, Star realizes that, but that's not the focus of this. The focus is the fact that a white police officer killed him for no good reason. I really liked that moment too when Star calls out while she's being interviewed, "Why are you asking me about him dealing drugs? Shouldn't you be asking me about what happened that night?" And that was such a powerful moment too, where the interviewer asks her, "If you could talk to that police officer, what would you say?" And Star says, "I would ask him if he wished he had shot me too." Anthony Mackie's whole character though was really, really powerful. I haven't seen Anthony Mackie really in a villain role. He did a great job, and I was really impressed too because in the long run he didn't have a lot of lines, but his presence was very, very powerful. And he was a character I got super pissed at. He goes after the kids. Ooh, that moment where one, he shoots up the house, but two, towards the end, Star and Seven are locked in their father's store and they set the store on fire. Are you kidding me right now? Oh, it just upset me so much. And he got what he deserved at the end of the day, but that was intense. The moment where Seven is beat up and Seven's mom has to get the kids out before King comes back. That whole ending with Star's little brother scared me so badly, and it exemplified, of course, what the title is, which is Thug Life. If you don't know what that stands for, that's the hate you give little infants, F's everybody. And it's basically saying the hate that you give kids that's gonna end up screwing everybody else over. And that's what almost happens at the end of this movie. Star's dad is about to attack King, and then all of a sudden you just see her little brother holding the gun up and saying, "Leave my daddy alone." I teared up. I was so afraid that little kid was gonna die. I thought that was what was gonna happen, and I was gonna cry so hard. And again, I know I keep saying the word powerful, but that's what this movie is. She stands in front of her brother and holds her hands up and says, "No," and basically saying enough. Like, everybody needs to stop. Hate needs to stop giving in to hate. Now, the one other big moment that I want to talk about deals with the protest, which is started by the fact that the cop that killed Khalil is not going to be tried. You'll see for cases that end up getting news coverage of police being tried and found not guilty, but the fact that there are so many police officers who go through this where there's a grand jury not to actually try them for the crime they committed, to decide if there should even be a trial for the crime that they committed. So that means if the grand jury decides no, they don't get tried, they just walk away free. And this has happened so many times. That's what causes the protest in this movie, is the fact that this police officer gets off with nothing. And it definitely was eye-opening for me because I had to educate myself a lot on what was going on, and I'm still educating myself. And I don't know much about the judicial system, and realizing that that was a really big thing infuriated me. A person is dead, and the fact that the killer isn't going to be tried, that's absolutely crazy to me. That's not what should be happening. It should be that they get tried in a fair trial. It's just frustrating, and that's why this movement has been so big recently, because people have had enough. This is ridiculous how many times this has happened. But that protest was a very moving moment in the movie, especially when Star stands up and truly finds her voice. This movie overall just really touches your heart. The very, very end where Star finds the Harry Potter wand that Khalil and her used to play with. Makes me cry every time I watch the movie. Overall, it's just a really, really powerful movie and speaks a lot on what has been going on for years in America. That is really all I have to say about this movie. Even if you stayed through the spoilery section and you didn't watch this movie, go and watch it. It's so strong. And read the book too. I know I haven't read it, which is bad, but you should definitely go read it. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any other book, movie, or TV suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. I really appreciate it. You can also go to my blog, TiffanyBooksandMovies.blogspot.com, which talks about acting stuff. I recently was in a movie called Looks That Kill, so I talk about that a little bit on there, for example. And it also just updates you on when I have new content out or for some reason why there isn't a video up. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have an awesome day, evening, afternoon, whatever time of the day you're watching this. Go check out the links in the description and educate yourself on the Black Lives Matter movement. It's really, really important, and it's time for us to create some major changes. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day. Goodbye!